Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us virtually for this January 18th, 2022 meeting of the Capital Area Architectural and Planning Board. I hope that you were all able to have a restful and joyous end to 2021. And I'm now going to call the meeting to order. As the chair of the CAP board, I again determined that we would be best served by a virtual meeting with continued high levels of COVID-19 transmission across Minnesota. I hope we all be together safely and in person very soon. Members of the public can again view this meeting via a live stream on the board's YouTube channel. A recording of the meeting will remain available there following the meeting. As has been the practice in recent meetings, board members, please use the raise hand function in Teams if you wish to be recognized. Please also limit the use of the chat to only technology or other non-substantive issues so that members of the public can more fully experience our meeting this afternoon. Before I conduct a roll call, I want to note an initial welcome to our new board member, Dana Badgerow. So thank you so much for being here. She has been appointed by Governor Walz, and I wanted to just, we'll hear more from Dana in a moment. But I wanted to also just say, just take a moment to thank the amazing, the incredible, the wonderful Elaine Fink for her service on the board for 2 terms, beginning with her appointment in 2014. I am just so grateful for her steady presence on the board during my time as chair, and especially for her involvement in the process to select our executive secretary and her service on the board's comprehensive plan committee. So thank you so much, Elaine, for your service. Okay, I will go. So yes, the applause, right? The yellow hands, the applause, the reactions. We'll make sure. Also, we are going to send her a certificate as well for her good work, and we'll follow up. But if you get a chance, fellow CAP board members, to go ahead and drop her a line and just thank her for her service, that would also be wonderful. So I will go first, then call on our board members here in alphabetical order. And since we have a new member here, please briefly introduce yourself in addition to indicating that you are present. So Ms. Badgerow, you can introduce yourself more thoroughly next. So go right ahead and welcome.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I'm just delighted. I hope I can be a steady presence as well going forward. I was Commissioner of Administration twice under Governors Pawlenty and Carlson. I was also a member of the Capital Restoration Board as a public member, and I most recently served on the group dealing with Commemorative Works. So the state capitol is extraordinarily important to me. It's been important to my career. I love the place, I love the whole area, and I'm looking to give back in this way. So thank you for asking me to join, and I'm thrilled to be here.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Dr. Kate Bean.
Hello, my relatives. My name is Dr. Kate Bean. I apologize for having my camera off. I've got 2 little ones online schooling today and 1 sick with COVID. So it's a little rough in the household right now, but I'm here and I'm formerly with the Minnesota Historical Society, but I now serve as executive director of the Minnesota Museum of American Art. And I also serve as adjunct faculty at the University of Minnesota in the American Indian Studies Department. And I'm a citizen of the Flandreau Santee Sioux Dakota Nation, as well as Muskogee Creek, and I'm excited to see you all here today.
Wonderful, thank you, and we are sending lots of good vibes and healthy vibes to your house, Dr. Bean. Alicia Belden, please go right ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alicia Belden. My day job is principal and owner of Urban Design Perspectives. We are an architecture and project management firm in Minneapolis. I also serve this year as AIA Minnesota president and serve on Twin Cities Habitat for Humanity board as well. So this is my 2nd term on the CAP board. So thrilled to welcome you. Oops, that's my phone, sorry. Turn that off, but glad to be here today. Nice to see everyone.
Thank you so much, Alicia. It's so good to have you. Representative Freiberg.
Hi, I'm Mike Freiberg. I'm one of the legislative members of the board. I'm in my 5th term representing parts of Crystal, Golden Valley, New Hope, and Robbinsdale. And this is my 1st term on the CAAPB board. So great to be here.
Thank you, Representative. James Garrett Jr. cannot join us today, but you'll have the opportunity to meet him at a future meeting. Don Grundhauser, are you on by phone? I don't think Don is with us today. So you are up, Representative Hertas. Please go right ahead.
Well, good morning, good afternoon. I guess it's morning where I am. Anyway, I'm State Rep Jerry Hertas, and I represent 33A, which is the western part of Hennepin County. 11 communities out there. This is my 2nd term on CAAPB board, and I'm serving my 5th term in the Minnesota House.
Thank you so much, Representative, and we are jealous because I think it's probably warmer where you are than where we are.
Just 70.
Rub it in. Okay. But it's a beautiful day here today. It is sunny and like 30, so we'll take it. James Mclean, go right ahead.
Hey, good afternoon. James Mclean. I am, I believe, in my 1st term still, although I've kind of lost track of time a bit. I am a resident of St. Paul, live near the Capitol, and in my day job and sometimes evening and weekend job, I work in government relations for Health Partners. So actually, in normal times, spend a lot of time at the Capitol for work as well.
Thank you. We can all relate to not being able to have any sense of time or space anymore. I believe Senator Nelson cannot be with us today. Senator Pappas was also not able to be with us. So our mighty House members are going to have to hold it down for the legislature during our meeting today. But as someone who is House trained, I have the absolute confidence that that can happen. And then Daniel Yang, not sure if Daniel is with us today. Okay, so we are a smaller but mighty crew, and Dana, you will meet more of our fellow members in the future, some of whom I think you already know, actually. But it'll be good for us to all be together. So we do have a quorum present and can move forward. And of course, Dana, we had you introduce yourself already. If there's anything else that you would like to add, I'm happy to hear from you, but just wanted to say, of course, we know that Ms. Badgerow comes to us having served as Commissioner of Administration under Governor Pawlenty from 2004 to 2009. She then served as the President and CEO of the Better Business Bureau of Minnesota and North Dakota, where she retired in 2016. I'm also grateful, of course, to have had her most recent service here with the CAAPB Board Decision Process Advisory Task Force on Commemorative Works, where she was a really active member, and we are so grateful for her service. And so, Ms. Badgerow, I don't know if there's anything else that you would like to add. You can go right ahead and do so now.
I don't think there's much else, Lieutenant Governor. I'm retired, as you mentioned. I'm actually a volunteer. I manage a thrift shop, a lovely thrift shop, I might add, at 64th and Penn. Please come see us. A nonprofit job. But I have lots of time to devote to this, and I'm so thrilled to be back having any part to do with state government, because not only do I love the whole mechanics and the apparatus and the processes, but I love the result, and that's what we're all about here.
That's right. Thank you so much. And one of my love languages is thrifting. So I'm excited to hear about that, and we'll put it on the list. So now I'm going to administer the CAAPB Board Oath of Office. I will read the Oath of Office to you now, Ms. Badgerow, and when I'm done, if you agree, please say I do. So do you, Dana Badgerow, solemnly swear to support the Constitution of the United States and the state of Minnesota, and to faithfully discharge your duties described in Minnesota Statute 15B as a member of the Capital Area Architectural and Planning Board to the best of your judgment and ability?
I do. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations. You are officially a member of the CAP board. Welcome. We are so excited to work with you. So in addition to the CAP board members, we are supported by an incredible advisors and staff of the CAP board. So I'll ask now that our architectural advisors and CAP board staff introduce themselves briefly, as well so that members of the public know who supports our work and that you can put a face to the name. So architectural advisors and CAP board staff, please come off camera, unmute your mic and introduce yourself to the board. And Executive Secretary, I might ask you to help facilitate that a little bit here.
Okay. Hi there. I'm Merritt Clapsmith, Executive Secretary of the CAP board. I started in this role in July of 2021, loving the experience. My background is in city planning. And I've done lots of different things in the Metro and St. Paul over my lifetime. So I'm really enjoying this position and working with people. I'm reading my audio is weird, so with that, I'm going to pass it to Peter, and then Peter, you can pass after that.
Thanks, Merritt. Yeah, and my name's Peter Musty. I've been with the CAP board as principal planner and the zoning administrator for between 5 and 6 years. Before that, I was a consultant on the private sector side as a project designer and urban designer, developing codes and guidelines for tricky infill projects all over the United States, and doing increasingly interesting work with creative placemaking and community-based planning before I started. And so very happy to be with CAP board. Welcome to Dana. It was a treat working with Dana, and I'm very much looking forward to moving forward with you. Let's move to the advisors, Merritt. If your audio is fixed, we'll just move to the advisors. Start with Michael, maybe.
Oh, and also Laura Dotson.
Yes.
Hello, I'm Michael Bjerberg. I'm an architect with Leo Daly. I specialize in historic, and hi Dana. And I've been active on the Capitol Complex since 2005. Really happy to be advising the CAP board, and welcome back, Dana.
Hi, I'm Tony Chevalier. I'm a landscape architect appointed to the advisor role for the State Arts Board. My day job, I'm a senior landscape architect with MnDOT in the site development unit. Primarily my work is on rest areas across the state of Minnesota. And in addition to that, I'm also an adjunct associate professor at the University of Minnesota in the College of Design.
Welcome, Dana. I'm Danita Lemon. I am a principal and architect with Miller Dunwoody Architecture, and have sat on the CAP board for a number of years now, and a privilege to be here.
And Laura, are you able to quickly introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Laura Dotson. I work for the CAP board in an office support role. I'm a graphic design student at MCTC right now, and I'm really enjoying my time here. I only started at the beginning of November, so it's a lot to learn. Thank you.
All right, I'm waiting to see if my sound is coming through okay, otherwise I will call in by phone. Should I call in by phone?
I would suggest you call in by phone.
All right.
You sound a little bit like the Speak and Spell guy from back in the day.
All right. Well, what I might say, it'll take me just a moment to call in, so you can talk amongst yourselves or begin discussing our next item, which is going to be Commemorative Works.
I think what I might do, if it is all right, is the prerogative of the chair here, while you are calling in Merritt, what I might ask is, because we do have a quorum, that we go ahead and approve our minutes. So we're taking up approval of the minutes from the November 18th and December 1st, 2021 board meetings. Board members, I'll give you a minute to find it, but you have received the draft minutes in your materials, and they were also posted online. So I'm wondering if any member has any corrections or edits to the meeting minutes that they wish to propose.
You also might invite Dana to.
And Dana, I might ask you just to abstain since you were not a member during that time. So if there are no changes or edits to the minutes, I will ask for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from November 18th and December 1st, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Representative Freiberg. Can I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Belton. Motion seconded. We'll now proceed in a roll call vote in alphabetical order on the motion. Dr. Bean.
Aye.
Ms. Belton.
Aye.
Representative Freiberg.
Aye.
Representative Hertaus.
Hertaus votes aye.
Mr. Mclean.
Aye.
And as chair, I vote aye as well. The motion is approved and the November and December 2021 meeting minutes are confirmed. Thank you so much. Executive Secretary, I'm going to come back to you here as we are talking about our commemorative works. So that's our next agenda item, updates and further discussion on the proposed updates to the Minnesota rules on commemorative works. As noted in the communications from the Executive Secretary and the accompanying memo in our packets for this meeting, we are now planning for a March 14th public hearing on our proposed rule. So Executive Secretary, can you please provide an overview of the process-related developments since our last meeting and what our members should expect during this hearing?
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, you sound great.
Terrific. Thank you all. We have been moving for a number of months now, ever since the fall, through our Commemorative Works rulemaking process. And there's a whole lot of items that existed on this list previously, which we have completed, which is wonderful news. So what you see here today are the upcoming items. We're at our meeting today on the 18th, where we're talking about commemorative works, and we'll be looking hopefully to approve notice of intent to adopt. That would be released, if approved, officially released on February 7th. And that is accompanied by the rules and the sonar. That would set us up with timing to have a public hearing chaired by the ALJ on March 14th. Their office has tentatively scheduled this date and time, 10 a.m., but it will not proceed without our vote today to move ahead with that. After that, there's a 5-day rebuttal period following the hearing, and then possibly the ALJ could extend that for up to 20 days. Following the comments coming in before, during, and in the days following the hearing, we will reconvene as a board to discuss any of that input, and the board will decide if it wants to make any last-minute revisions to the rules based on the feedback it heard. And then it will vote on the copy of the rules as it wishes it to be, to proceed to the administrative law judge to begin her review process and preparing a recommendation, which The amount of time that takes can vary. We're figuring it'll probably be April and May. When that is complete, the CAP board will reconvene to consider the recommendation and how to proceed on the rules. Any questions just on the kind of that sequence piece? All right, next please. Okay, an important part of the rulemaking process is called the SONAR, the Statement of Need and Reasonableness. And the SONAR is something that we are preparing as CAP board staff with assistance from some rulemaking pros that we have at the state. And that assistance has really been appreciated. The SONAR is a document that isn't publicly released until the notice of intent to adopt is released with the rules. The key elements that are in the SONAR, it's quite a long document. And what the SONAR does is first of all, it says, why is the rule needed? And given that you have this need, what are you doing to reasonably address the need? And so there's a statement that's general need and reasonableness, but then the SONAR also requires you to go through kind of each subpart of your proposed rules and provide information about that subpart and why it specifically is needed. The SONAR will identify classes of persons you anticipate to be affected. What are the probable costs to other state agencies, the city or other local governments, private parties, public parties. So you identify your expectations around that. And they also ask, well, what would be the cost if you don't adopt it? You know, if this is something you need, is there actually a monetary cost of not adopting it? And are there any alternative methods to adopt it that would be less costly? And finally, it includes a plan saying who you plan to notify and how about the proposed rules that would be affected by the rules or interested in them. So I've been working on this for quite some time. It's a big document, but in reading kind of the rulemaking things, they say the SONAR is almost as important as the rules themselves. So are there questions on the SONAR piece? Again, that's something prepared in-house, but people kind of understand how that works or have any questions? All right, the SONAR is really what the judge will be reviewing closely to look at justification. All right, next. The notice of intent to adopt is the hearing notice that states that there are proposed rules under consideration, that a public hearing is being scheduled with an ALJ, administrative law judge, and the date and time of that hearing. It includes a copy of the proposed rules, and it includes the SONAR document as well. And when the notice of intent to adopt is posted, the official hearing comment portal on the Office of Administrative Hearings is opened where people can submit comments. So that's a very specific process that moves forward the same way every time. But what we do when we send out our notice to affected people is we can send that out, you know, in any way we want, but it needs to include the information about how people can find their way to that official comment portal to make their comments there. So again, that will be opening February 7th or 8th. Any questions about that? Anyone who's had an experience with rulemaking, do you have any tips on kind of helping to get the word out? If yes, just send me a note. And I welcome everybody on the board. Please to forward the information you have to anyone you think who might be interested. We will also, one of the groups we are notifying when this is released is the press. You know, there are a set of press contacts that are always interested in affairs of the CAP board, and so we will be sending it to them as well. So I'd imagine you might see some short articles announcing that this is happening. Okay. Next. So these are the details of the rulemaking public hearing. Again, scheduled for Monday, March 14th. It is to begin at 10 a.m. and it continues until everybody who has a desire to speak has been able to do so. So if we get to kind of the end of the day, and I don't think there's a prescribed time for what the end of the day would be, it's up to ALJ, and there are still people wanting to comment, then the ALJ will schedule another day for the hearing, presumably the next day, and comments would be continued then. This will be a virtual meeting, so it'll be in a WebEx format. The chair of the hearing is Administrative Law Judge Ann O'Reilly. Again, she sets kind of the protocols for the meeting, how long people have to comment, etc. And then I will be giving a presentation at the beginning that provides the information about the proposed rules, why they're needed, what they would do. People will then move, they'll open up public comment, and that will proceed. And during the whole meeting, the role of board members, you're in the role of listening, just like other members of the public would be. So you don't need to be asking questions, or you won't be called upon by anyone. But I would encourage all of you to tune in for at least part of the hearing. I know all day is a lot to ask, but hope that you're able to catch some of the hearing so you really have a sense of how it's going and the nature of the kinds of comments that you're receiving. So you'll get some more details later. That's what I know for now. Are there any questions? Whenever people are quiet, I'm like, they know it all or they don't know. They're so overwhelmed. All right, we'll go to the next one.
I just want to say to the secretary, I don't need you to, I don't have any questions. I think you've been very thorough, but if people do, please raise your hand. I know that we'll have an opportunity at the hearing to give some sort of overview of what we've done so far. And I really look forward to that. I think that this has been a real labor of love, and folks have been paying quite a bit of attention to the details, and so many folks were a part of this. So I think it's very exciting. Ms. Badgerow has her hand raised, so go right ahead.
This is partly because I've been a little bit out of touch with this process since we delivered our recommendations some time ago. And I asked, Madam Secretary, I asked you this question when we talked. Are we expecting 400 or 400 commenters? I know there's been a big effort to get the word out, and I know there's a good deal of public interest. There was also a task force, I believe, that looked into how we can best communicate this and get public input. What has happened in terms of our expectation of pros and cons being voiced at this hearing?
Yeah, thank you. We'll definitely have somewhere between 400 and 400 people attending the hearing. We don't know at this point. There's no pre-registration mechanism. And, it really depends on how well the word gets out and how interested people are in speaking at a hearing that at this point is about a rulemaking process. Not the most exciting in and of itself, although it's a very important topic. So what I've found in my many years of doing public meetings is you tend to get strong attendance if there are people that are personally really making an effort to turn people out. And my hope in this case would be, because I think it's important that all of you should be working hard to turn out people that you think care about this topic and have something to share.
So, Madam Secretary, we can absolutely make sure that we are in follow-up messages to CAP board members, making it as accessible as possible. Here are some of the links that you can share, encouraging people to do so, as well as reaching out to our task force members. Ms. Badger, to your point, making sure that we are communicating with people who might not always be sort of the usual suspects who would be engaged and involved in this space and place. Anything else on this point? Okay, thank you. Go right ahead, Executive Secretary.
Yeah, oh, okay. If there are no further questions, we'll move on to the next item. So in this packet, I sent a number of attachments that were follow-up to conversation from last time. The first of that is a new 20-page document. And this document identifies what has changed in our language regarding standards and procedure for the addition of new commemorative works. So Representative Hertas pointed out at the last meeting that the rules document only shows changes to the past rules language. And most of our commemorative works information was in a policy document that was referenced in the rules, but not in the rules themselves. So you don't see, you don't get a good comparison from looking just at the proposed rule changes. So this document, which was in your packet, what we did is we went through the current policy sequentially, starting from section 1 and going through the entire document. And in black text, we put down what the existing policy document says. And again, the current policy only relates to addition of new work, so that's what it's addressed. And then under each excerpt from the existing language in blue is described where there is a similar reference or language in the proposed rules. It's a lot to digest. Peter and Laura and I played with different ways to try to present the information, and I think this was the one that we came up with that we thought would be the easiest to follow. And so in each case, you'll see where you can find it in the proposed rules and what it says. Most of it is very self-explanatory because it's just a change in language, but not a change in intent. If the few cases where it might be a little bit different, I've tried to provide explanation. So what I'd encourage you to do is if you are looking at this and you still have questions or things you think could be explained more clearly, please let me know, because I'm going to be providing this as an exhibit to the SONAR document so that the public can review it as well. So I welcome any suggestions you have for making this as understandable as possible to members of the public. I can see, I think Representative Hertas is on the phone. He's the main one I want to say. So is it all right? But if anyone, any questions, or were people able to kind of follow this? I'm imagining heads nodding in the air.
I see heads nodding. I see some heads nodding.
All right. Well, again, if you have any thoughts on making it better, please let me know. All right. Next item. Okay. You had attached to the packet, of course, the updated draft of the proposed rules from the Minnesota Revisor's Office. And you can see in this top white box here, you know, what the format is for that kind of a document. But every time the Minnesota Revisor makes updates to the draft rules we're working on, they don't show what changed from the the last draft we had. So we have provided CAP board staff a document that goes through, that mirrors the rules document, and for every section, we show what has changed since the last draft the board reviewed. That was attached to your packet as well. This is just an example here. You see the rules version above, and then below in the document we prepared, you can see that between the last rules draft you saw and the current one, the word formally and the word reasons were struck from this particular excerpt because they were considered unneeded or superfluous. If you were to look through the entire document, that is the nature of the changes that occurred during this recent set of revisions. It was a lot of fine-tuning of language and the way things are characterized. The Minnesota Revisor's Office has some very specific rules around the type of language you can use, you know, never using passive voice, always identifying the person who is acting in relation to a verb, and things like that. Or we repeatedly use the term jury in our current policy and in our proposed rule that refers to a jury for a design competition. But it was felt that that's not a term that's widely understood by people. So instead, throughout the document, it was replaced with the term a design review committee. I hope that you had a chance to look at it and found that the changes tended to be technical in nature. But again, if there was anything you wondered about, happy to discuss it now, or you could send me a note. We're a little, I mean, the Minnesota Revisor, I should just say, every now and then I didn't totally agree with what they were recommending, you know, in the way to say a sentence, but, and so if I felt it was important, I'd kind of push back, but ultimately if they say, you just can't say it this way, then we don't say it that way.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Staff did just an incredible, you and your staff did an incredible job on this. It is so thorough, and I am just very appreciative. This has been all about the details, so thank you. Ms. Badgerow, go right ahead.
I was going to mimic what you said, Lieutenant Governor, that I think the staff did an outstanding job, but my review of this, hearkening back to the work that we recommended, these are not substantive changes. I don't find anything here that is really goes to the heart of the matter, drastically changes anything that we recommended. I think these are wordsmithing is the way I would phrase them. And I from my perspective, I don't find them difficult to accept.
Thank you for that feedback. That's really important. I appreciate it. Any other questions? Comments or snide remarks? I'll take those too. Wonderful. So, Executive Secretary, do you have anything else that you would like to add here?
No, I just want to thank the CAP board staff and folks from a couple of other offices who've really helped tremendously throughout this process. You know, with something this important, the more eyes you have on it, the better. So at this point, I'm excited to see this move forward into the next steps. We have no sense of what that experience is going to be like, but I'm looking forward to it. It's important work of the board, and I hope you're all getting the word out, tracking what's going on, and please, you'll expect that I'll be sending you a few more emails than normal, where I think there's a substantive update that you should know about as we're moving into the public hearing date on March 14th. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Ms. Badgerow, did you have another question?
Is there a new?
I'm slightly technology challenged here. No, I didn't lower my hand. I apologize.
No worries. No worries. Okay. So I think we can move now into this next piece here. Members, you have in your packet and displayed here on the screen a draft resolution to authorize a public hearing and notice of intent to adopt the rules before us today. As noted in the Executive Secretary's memo, the resolution will confirm our intent to continue on this process. Madam Secretary, is there anything further you would like to add to this proposed resolution?
No, it's just the official document that is part of the many forms and paperwork that go with the rulemaking process.
And members, do you have any questions before we proceed here? Okay. All righty. So with that, I will ask for a motion to approve this resolution. Is there such a motion?
I'll move it. James Mclean.
Thank you, Mr. Mclean. Is there a second?
I'll second it. Mike Freiberg.
Thank you, Representative Freiberg. Motion seconded. We'll now proceed to a roll call vote in alphabetical order on the motion. Ms. Badgerow.
Aye.
Dr. Bean.
Aye.
Ms. Belden.
Aye.
Representative Freiberg.
Aye.
Representative Hertas. Representative Hertas. Okay, we're going to keep rolling here. Mr. McLean.
Aye.
Representative Hertas, coming back to you one more time. I think he is double duty right now. Okay, I will go ahead and say, and as chair, I vote aye as well. So this motion prevails. We did it. It's very exciting. So we are now moving on to the next step in the process. So just take a moment, deep breath. We made it to this point. We are now headed to the hearing. Thank you to all of the people whose hands touched this really important process, and we now move on to the next step. So thank you so much. We will now turn to presentations on capital area projects that are related to transportation, movement, and place. So Peter Musty, our principal planner and zoning administrator, will introduce the topics and presenters. Mr. Musty, go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very pleased to bring planning project overviews for 3 major planning projects impacting the capital area, brought to us by partners at Minnesota Department of Transportation and Ramsey County today. I'm going to be asking them to say hello and introduce themselves, a bit about their backgrounds, positions and their roles with the projects, and then the goal, Madam Chair, if you're okay, the goal would be to spend 10 minutes per presentation, including perhaps one question at the end of each presentation, and then hopefully there's time left for additional questions at the end of all 3. So in order, we'll start with introductions, and then we'll layer back through in the same order with the presentations. In order, we have Sheila Kauppi, Lisa Austin, and Melissa Barnes of MnDOT, and then Frank Ellercone from Ramsey County. I hope all of their cameras on and their mics are on, and we'll start with Sheila.
Thank you, Peter. My name is Sheila Kauppi. I'm the Deputy District Engineer at MnDOT Metro District. As Deputy District Engineer and Public Servant for the last 23 years, I'm committed to maintaining and building a multimodal transportation system that's accessible to everyone. I'm a Minnesota native, have grown up on the Iron Range, the youngest of 3, have a civil engineering degree. I have a career history in asking questions to help solve potential problems versus starting with a solution. I knew at an early age I wanted to serve Minnesota.
Lisa. Thank you, Sheila.
Very good. Thank you. This is Lisa Austin. I'm in MnDOT's Metro District in an office called the Center for Community Connections. I've been with MnDOT for about 13 years. And as you can imagine from the name of the office I work in, I deal a lot with communities and community requests for things they want to do with MnDOT. With that, pass back to you, Peter.
Melissa.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. My name's Melissa Barnes. I'm MnDOT Metro's North Area Manager. That means I oversee program delivery for Anoka and Ramsey counties. I'm a civil engineer, and I've been with the state for approximately 9 years, coming with a background from the private sector. So happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. And Frank, and then we'll go to Sheila again.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Frank Alarcon. I'm a transportation planner with Ramsey County Public Works. For about 4.5 years, I've served as the deputy project manager for what was first called the Rush Line Bus Rapid Transit and is now called the Metro Purple Line Bus Rapid Transit Project.
Thanks, everybody. We will go through Sheila, first presentation, and then Lisa with Melissa can answer questions, and then Frank again. And so we'll cycle through. I wanted to just say one thing for all of you to look for these themes as we go through, very similar to our comp plan and some of the mandates that we have, some of the things we've been trying to bring and infuse into the planning for all three projects from the CAP board perspective. Stakeholder engagement at the very earliest stages. Really the idea of the capital area being a unifying, where we're reconnecting the fabric. There is a jurisdictional puzzle to solve here in the capital area that's left over from a lot of larger projects. And you'll see that in these presentations. And then, of course, looking at it holistically, that'll come through too. So with that, Madam Chair, I think I'll start with Sheila CAAPB.
Thank you, Chair, Board. Thanks for the invite today, and thank you for allowing Peter to spend so much time with us for the last number of years. We appreciate that. Today, I'd like to take a few minutes to give some background on Rethinking I94, where we're at in the process now, and give you some context to the input we've received and our efforts to hear from more people along the corridor. Next. MnDOT's primary responsibility is to preserve and repair bridges, walls, and pavement, with the goal of enhancing mobility, safety, and interconnectivity. Rethinking I94 is a long-term effort to engage with communities along the corridor between Minneapolis and St. Paul. We do that to understand the needs and wishes for those who live, work, and play along the corridor. We recognize that actions 60 years ago devastated communities. MnDOT and our partners are today prioritizing the well-being of people. Next slide. The current effort of Rethinking I94 is essentially focused between Highway 55 in Minneapolis and Marion Street in St. Paul. The Rethinking I94 project published its notice of intent in early 2020. This is a legal document that lets agencies and public know that MnDOT intends to pursue an environmental EIS for the project. The environmental document has co-leads as the Federal Highway Administration. We are following both the Minnesota and national environmental process. My colleague Lisa Austin will speak to the area with the star on it, which is considered east of Marion Street, after my update. Next. Construction of I-94 in the 1960s destroyed homes, businesses, and disconnected neighborhoods. Those affected were predominantly lower income, minority, and immigrant communities. This led to a pattern of distrust with the Minnesota Highway Department, now MnDOT, and is still felt today. Next slide. MnDOT is committed to doing better. In 2015, MnDOT acknowledged the past transportation policies that dismantled neighborhoods and apologized to the Rondo community. Our work the last few years has focused on understanding communities in the neighborhood, especially the people of color and the indigenous people. The first phase of Rethinking I-94 from 2016 to 2018 looked at I-94 between Broadway Avenue in Minneapolis and Highway 61 in St. Paul. Rondo's was the initial focus, as that neighborhood, which was predominantly African-American community, was heavily impacted by the construction of I-94. Many other communities were also adversely affected with our construction. Rethinking I94 and MnDOT's commitment to do better applies to the entire corridor. Next slide. Our study team inventoried the physical characteristics of I94 and developed more detailed understanding of the highway's condition that could guide the development of future conceptual designs. This segment of I94 is a very complex and busy place. Highway users are not just cars, they're also trucks and buses and non-motorized users. Highway infrastructure isn't just pavement, it's also bridges, tunnels, noise walls, retaining walls, drainage structures. We also learned that when people asked what was important to them, they talked about the need for jobs, a vital business area. Next slide. In phase one, we conducted initial engagement with stakeholders. It was great. There was no project, there's no funding. It was great. We could just have conversations with people. Next. We also developed zone profiles for 6 distinct areas along the I94 corridor. These areas were profiled the communities, right, and learned about the peoples that lived within those zones. We learned about how familiar they were with MnDOT. We learned about how they engage with community and how they might engage with MnDOT. We learned about how residents moved around in their community. Next slide. We also researched existing transportation, back slide, sorry. Researched existing transportation conditions. And we also developed ideas for improving safety and traffic congestion. Next. In phase one, we learned that people were interested in items beyond the freeway. They also shared what they expected from any future work that we would be doing. To this, we developed the livability framework, as there were issues to be considered that were broader community goals in addition to our transportation needs. Livability workshops were held this past summer to gather information from community members around the complex framework that will help guide us in moving into our phase 2 environmental document. For MnDOT, the livability framework is a shared responsibility. Click. As Peter mentioned, there are similarities with the work that we are doing at MnDOT and also with the CAP board. This is maybe a familiar graphic to those that have been involved in the CAP board, but this is the holistic 5-point lens. If you look closely, maybe some of the same wording is in that. That'll also be helping shape future decisions we do on the I94 corridor and also in the CAP board area. Next. As you know from your work, an undertaking of this scale does not happen quickly, because the projects that will be developed out of this community vision will have a huge impact for years to come on the community. We're pursuing an EIS to outline a proposed program of projects for the surrounding area, in the surrounding environment. That brings us to where we are today. I'd like to show this graphic because I think this is to show we are on a marathon. A project of this size and this magnitude is not a sprint, and we want to make sure that we're doing it right with the community and listening amongst all the things that are going on in the environment and in the communities with the civil unrest and the global pandemic. Next. This graphic intends to share that we're including what we learned in the community, from the community in 2016 and today, and bring it into our formal environmental process to evaluate alternatives. The livability framework is included in our phase 2 environmental process. Click. For there are issues to be considered broader than the community goals. In addition to the transportation needs, we highlight that the livability framework is included in our environmental process. Next. Some issues MnDOT does not have the authority to address and cannot address alone. We may need to facilitate or partner to make these become a reality. Next. As a commitment to transparency, MnDOT released draft documents well ahead of the required formal comment period in the environmental document. These draft documents included a statement of goals, logical termini, purpose and need, and evaluation criteria. These were released in the summer of 2021 versus in-person community gatherings, virtual meetings, or online open house. The statement of goals is one of those early documents. The statement of goals is unique to this project in this corridor. It outlines that beyond the project purpose, improvements will support broader community goals. These were identified in phase 1 and the applicable elements are included in our evaluation criteria that will be used to develop alternatives. Simply stated, the program of projects will incorporate livability framework, opportunities, and support community-based approach at reconnecting neighborhoods, revitalizing communities, and ensuring residents have a meaningful voice in transportation decisions. Next. Going back to the federal and Minnesota process for the environmental review, it is prescribed by federal law that we have a draft purpose and need. The comprehensive decision-making tool for policymakers is also to inform the public that the proposed projects that could affect the environment and the people who live, work, and play in surrounding communities. We're at that process now. We're hearing from people. Maybe some of you have heard from them too, but we don't think we're hearing from everyone. We know that when we listened to people for 2 years, we heard from a lot more, and they provided a lot of input to us. And so right now, we're working on continuing to engage and listen and make sure that we've gotten it right. Next. MnDOT has several roles. While these roles are not new to MnDOT and many other agencies, Rethinking I94 has highlighted the value and opportunity for MnDOT to serve as a facilitator. Next. We utilize this slide to show that we believe facilitation is as important as the leader or partner role, where we can bring those voices that are tied with our community to the table and elevate those voices. Next. One such way we're facilitating and supporting a community-based approach is Reconnect Rondo, who is leading a restorative movement. Their mission is to lead an effort to revitalize Rondo community with a land bridge that reconnects Rondo and reignites a vibrant African-American cultural enterprise district in St. Paul. Planning funding has been identified to flow through MnDOT to reconnect Rondo from the last legislative session. The proximity and shared airspace with MnDOT facilities will require a close coordination. However, one thing that's very important and underlined, this is not a MnDOT project or a proposal. We're partnering. We're working with Reconnect Rondo to help their vision come true. And we're elevating their voices when we can. More information can be found on their website as well. Next. We have a lot of work to do, and we know we cannot do it alone. We know that to be successful as a region, we need to come together, learn, and do better. Listening and having a conversation about wishes and wants helps us design project elements that are most meaningful. We know that many things have impacted our community since 2020, and we want to be sensitive that we're listening and being adaptive during these times. I thank you for your time today and look forward to taking questions and returning at a future date.
Thank you, Sheila. So, Madam Chair, with that, I think turning for a question would be good. While we do that, I'd just like to share that both Paul Mandel, when he was Executive Secretary, and I have been attending and been watchful of this process for several years now. And there has been a very genuine effort, a multi-layered effort from the first phases now through the more formal phases as they begin to really listen in a lot of different ways. And now Merritt and I are both attending as we can the monthly check-ins with a lot of the agency staff. So with that, any single question at this point, and then we can move forward.
Mr. Mclean, go right ahead.
Hey, thanks for the update. It sounds like still a lot of kind of planning and engagement work to go, but I was just curious if the large federal kind of infrastructure bill that passed has any implications for this to potentially accelerate, or too soon to tell? Just curious if there's any kind of information related to that you can share.
That's a great question. I know it came at what seemed like an opportune time. Many conversations around similar topics, and people at the Washington level definitely did highlight the Reconnect Rondo project and endeavor when they were having conversations, as well with additional funding. We're definitely keeping a watchful eye as we try to figure out what is in that bill, what dollars might be available. Right now, as while I would love money to come to us tomorrow to say build a thing, we also want to make sure that we're following that process to make sure that we're not doing something like we did before, where we built something without making sure we're listening to the community. So we have a watchful eye because we want to be ready and available if money did come, because we know the importance of this project in connecting communities to the transportation network and beyond.
And Mr. Mclean, today is exactly the right day for you to ask that question. We revealed our local jobs and projects plan, our bonding plan. And one of the questions that came up, of course, is what about all of the dollars that are coming from the federal government as well? And we're still determining, which projects will require a match, et cetera, but this is an incredible opportunity. I think it's about $7 billion that will be coming to Minnesota. It's projects like this one, I think, that are incredibly exciting, and I just appreciate, Ms. Copy, all of the work that has gone into this, the thoughtfulness, the just willingness to tell the truth about what has happened in this corridor in the past, and looking to connect with community to try to do right and to hopefully help heal some of the harm that was done with this highway and displacement of community, and working to build something better in partnership with folks who have lived there and who've been in this community for a very long time. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sheila. And again, to point out, these are overviews today with the intent that especially the next two could be wrapping up within the next year. And I can point questions back to these leads from any of you at any time in the coming months. So thanks, Sheila. I'm going to ask Lisa to step forward and put on her slides.
Very good. Thank you, Peter. And you have the slides ready? Right, there we go. Just was taking a minute to update. Thank you very much. So thanks everyone for your interest in the work today. Again, I'm Lisa Austin, and I'm working on behalf of Melissa Barnes, who's the North Area Manager for this part of the Metro. We're calling this the Downtown Common Stakeholder Coordination. And as Sheila talked about the different roles that MnDOT can play, I'd say that in this work, we are really playing that facilitator role. We're facilitating conversations with all the stakeholders. Go ahead, next slide, please. So as Sheila talked about phase 1 of Rethinking I94, this was the original map that was used in that phase 1 study. It went from Broadway in Minneapolis all the way to 61 in St. Paul. And you saw that now that we're into phase 2 of Rethinking I94, the boundaries for that project have shifted to 35W to Marion Street. So that leaves the two ends as not part of the Rethinking I94 project. So one of the reasons that we've changed those boundaries is because there's so many unique things happening, in downtown Minneapolis and to the west, and in downtown St. Paul and to the east, that they really deserved their own studies. Also, the infrastructure was at a different stage of its life cycle. The area between the two downtowns was in a different condition than the others. Go ahead, next slide, please. So when those and you can hit click again too, I think there's, yeah. So when those boundaries changed, MnDOT committed to studying the two areas to the west and the east of the Rethinking I94 project. So we've made that commitment. Next slide, please. And we've identified this boundary a little more detailed than just Marion to 61. We've worked with our partners to put a red line around the corridor we're studying, and then we have this area of influence in the shaded yellow area. And as you all appreciate, the land use and the destinations in this broader area really impact the use of the corridor. Go ahead, next slide, please. And this aerial view of the corridor, it's a little easier to see how complicated this section especially is. There's 9 bridges over 94 in this area, or over the interstates in this area, and a lot of interstate connections. You have both 35E going north and south, you have 52, you have 61, and then of course many important destinations people are trying to get to. So very complex corridor, and many jurisdictions that are overseeing this. Peter talks about the jurisdictional puzzle in this area with Ramsey County and MnDOT and St. Paul and the CAP Board and Metro Transit, and again, all those major destinations. So this picture really illustrates all that's going on in the area. Next slide, please.
And I just want to point out the quilt is very intentional, Lisa. I'm glad you put that up. And it's 9 bridges just within the capital area.
Oh, so, yeah. Good point. Yes. You asked me to leave the quilt pattern up so that it was illustrating that jurisdictional puzzle. Yes. Okay. And this is another slide that kind of gets to that too. Through this coordinating effort, we're reviewing all the local plans we can find in the area, and so far there's 35 that we've reviewed, and that's just in this downtown commons area. And this is such an important step to understand and summarize what's in each of these plans. Just to give a flavor of some of the plans, several CAP Board plans, several St. Paul plans, Ramsey County plans, the Race Street plan, the bikeways plans, the pedestrian plans, watershed district plans, climate action plans, and, the gold, purple, and Beeline BRT plans, and Dayton's Bluff and Frogtown and all the other adjacent neighborhood plans. A lot of people have put a lot of thought into what they want to see in this area, so summarizing them to make them one comprehensive document is helpful. What you'll see in the lower right corner is a little diagram that goes along with each of the reviews of the plans that talks about the land use and the transportation needs, and that blue area kind of highlights the things that are in each of the plans and the focus areas. And then we've also reviewed the plans for the livability pillars. So, like was in the Rethinking I94 project, we're looking at livability. We're also looking at what livability themes are in each of the plans, and some of the holistic pillars that are in the CAP Board plan obviously fall into those categories. Next slide, please. So kind of where we're at, we've contracted with Bolton & Mink, and they have a subcontractor formula, and the project management team are the local government partners that were copied on that original memo. So St. Paul and the CAP Board, Ramsey County, Metro Transit, and Metropolitan Council. And, again, thank you to Peter. You're a wealth of knowledge of this area, so appreciate your participation in this group. What we've accomplished so far is MnDOT summarized our existing conditions of our infrastructure. So, what's their pavement condition? What's the bridge condition? What do we estimate the useful life of all those components to be? And when do we think we'll either repair or replace some of those pieces? So that was a good starting point. The next thing we did, and I've already talked about the summary of those 35 land use and transportation plans. The draft is more or less done of that. So we've got the good overview of the plans. The next step will be really interesting. We'll interview stakeholders and convene workshops with stakeholders in the area. And these stakeholders are broader than the government partners. It'll include, the neighborhood associations, other groups that represent interests in the area, such as the Chamber of Commerce and some of the folks from some of the destinations, such as the hospitals or the community college. So in those workshops, we'll try to agree on priorities and reach some consensus and agree on who will take the lead on various things. In some cases, MnDOT will be the lead, and in some cases, some of the other partners will take the lead on something that's important to the community. And then lastly, we'll summarize all this in a final report. We expect that to be done sometime this summer. It'll summarize the plans and the workshops, and then really point to the future of what the future studies are going to be and who will lead the future studies. And that will also identify when we'll do more direct public engagement. As you can see from this, we're coordinating with organizations for this first stakeholder coordination effort. So yeah, next slide, please. This just kind of shows a timeline where, first we looked at this area in the phase 1 of Rethinking I94, then we committed to studying this area separately. Right now we're coordinating with the other stakeholders to find out what's in existing plans. And then after that, MnDOT will be doing some other studies and the other agencies. And this will be when we go into something bigger like the Rethinking I94 project, but for the downtown commons area. So that's all I have. Next slide gives Melissa's my name. So if anybody has anything, I'll pass back to you, Peter, to facilitate questions.
Thank you a lot. So for Melissa and Lisa, any question that comes up, please fire away, Madam Chair, if that's all right. And my comment until that happens is, it's just been a breath of fresh air because through the comp plan process that we just went through, and the committee members from the board that are here still would remember, there is just this jurisdictional puzzle that makes every larger holistic design project, like looking at Rice Street holistically, very difficult because it's so many jurisdictions. As you go from Monktown to downtown, the entire corridor goes from county to city to state, back to county and city. So it's very exciting to have a plan like this, not only to make sense of that, but make sense of all the community-based planning that we've been doing for several years. So any question? If not, we can circle back afterward. And might move to Frank Alarcon from the county, if that's fine, Madam Chair.
Yes, please proceed. We're moving right along here.
Let's go with Frank Alarcon, and I'll turn your slides on, Frank.
Thank you. Great. Well, thank you, Madam Chair, for having me here. I'm going to be sharing a brief update about the Metro Purple Line Bus Rapid Transit project, and specifically a component of that project called Station Area Planning. Next slide, please. And again, my role is I'm a transportation planner with Ramsey County, but I work full-time within the Purple Line project office that's led by Metro Transit, and I serve as the deputy project manager for the Purple Line project. So just to start with some basic information about the Metro Purple Line Bus Rapid Transit project, it is a 15-mile future transit corridor between downtown St. Paul and downtown White Bear Lake, serving 6 municipalities in Ramsey County. Within about a 10-minute walk of the 21 future Purple Line stations, there are over 111,000 residents. Slightly over half of those residents are BIPOC. And also along the corridor, there are about 106,000 jobs. Many of these jobs are in healthcare. There are about 50 hospitals and clinics along the Purple Line corridor. The Purple Line also provides many connections to the region's transit system. So there's a connection to the Metro Green Line right in the capital area. There are future connections to the Metro Gold Line, the Metro B Line, the Metro G Line, and many local and express buses that run within the corridor. Estimated ridership by 2040 is expected to be 7,400 rides a day. The project cost is approximately $445 million, split roughly halfway between Ramsey County and the Federal Transit Administration. And at this point, we expect construction to begin on the Metro Purple Line in 2024, with service starting in 2026. And I just want to mention that the name Purple Line is new to this project. For the last 6 or 7 years or so, it has been called the Rush Line Bus Rapid Transit project. But in the last couple of months, the project has transitioned from being led by Ramsey County to being led by Metro Transit. And as part of that transition, it was assigned a new name, the Purple Line. Next slide, please. So just a little bit more information about Bus Rapid Transit if you're not familiar with it. It has a few characteristics that distinguish it from conventional local bus service. So one defining feature is frequent service from early morning to late evening, all day in both directions. So that allows riders to use it throughout the day, not have to be dependent on a schedule. They can just show up to a station, much like the light rail services. Worst case scenario, they'll wait 10 to 15 minutes for a ride. Usually they'll wait less than that. Other features are the stations provide quite a bit of comfort to the riders. So there's a shelter, there's heat, there's seating, bike parking. Riders pay their fares at the station rather than on the bus, which makes the boarding process much faster and more efficient. And another feature of the Purple Line is that it'll largely operate in dedicated bus-only lanes. That really speeds up the trip and makes it more reliable for riders. Next slide, please. So station area planning is the component of this project that I'm mainly going to be focusing on today. So station area planning is a collaborative process that identifies ways to promote safe and direct station access and transit-oriented development within a walking distance of a transit station. And kind of the theory here is that a transit project is most useful when people are able to access stations easily and safely, and when there's plenty of development near stations, whether that development is housing, jobs, healthcare, or other services that people need. So station area planning kind of takes a holistic look at roughly the half-mile area around station to guide these future improvements within these station areas. And we use a half mile as the general geographic scope because that's approximately what an average person can walk in about 10 minutes. And 10 minutes is roughly what a typical transit customer is willing to walk to get to a high quality transit station. So Purple Line station area planning is going to play out between 2022 and 2024. It's expected to get started next month and run about 2 years starting then. Ramsey County is leading this effort in close coordination with many project partners. Ramsey County will lead a consultant team that has a number of different disciplines represented, from architecture to landscape architecture to urban design to community engagement. And the station area planning process will be integrated very closely with the overall Metro Purple Line Bus Rapid Transit project. So the next couple of years are also going to involve final design and engineering for the project to prepare it for construction starting in 2024. And this engineering and design work is going to be very closely coordinated with station area planning. And the expected final outcome of the station area planning effort is detailed station area plans that reflect public and stakeholder input and address issues within these station areas, including land use, biking and walking connections, housing, and how to implement the recommendations found in these plans. Next slide, please. So kind of in keeping with this afternoon's theme of many jurisdictions, there are many partners involved in this work. So as I mentioned, Ramsey County is leading the station area planning effort, but we coordinate very closely with our partners at the Met Council and Metro Transit. The Minnesota Department of Transportation is also involved insofar as the state's transportation infrastructure interacts with these station areas. The station area planning work is also funded by a Federal Transit Administration grant. And so the Federal Transit Administration is closely involved. And then perhaps most importantly in this effort are the local jurisdictions. So the CAAPB board and the various cities along the line are extremely important to this effort because these are the entities that have the land use controls around the station. So they have zoning authority and other sorts of land use controls that are really important in shaping how these station areas will develop in the years to come. Next slide, please. So station area planning as it relates to the capital area. So this is a very close collaboration with CAP Board staff and the CAP Board itself. There are 2 future Metro Purple Line stations within the capital area. One is the 14th Street station, which is right out in front of Regions Hospital, near the Robert Street Green Line station. And then there's the Mount Airy Street station, which is at the intersection of Jackson Street and Mount Airy Street in the Capitol Heights neighborhood. And the station area planning, as it relates to Capitol Heights, is an opportunity to update the Capitol Heights development framework. And Peter Musty and I just last week met with the Capitol Heights block group to have an initial conversation about this process and collaborations over the next couple of years. Next slide, please. So just to give a little more detail about where these stations are expected to be. So the little purple dashes show roughly where we expect the northbound and southbound platforms to be in these areas. And there's a lot of detailed design work that's going to play out over the next couple of years. So there'll be potential refinements, but this is roughly the location of the 14th Street station. Lots of jobs around here, state office jobs, healthcare jobs. It's also a key transfer point to the Metro Green Line, which is located just feet away from this station. Also, I should note that in this station area, the Metro Purple Line project team is coordinating very closely with other efforts in the area. So there's a Robert Street improvement project that's being developed that we're working very closely with. There's also another transit project in this area, the Metro G line, that will be planned, and we're working closely with them to make sure all these investments complement each other. Next slide, please.
And Frank, I would just like to point out, definitely the anchor stakeholders, once the consultant's hired, turn to the Department of Administration, really west of the line, and then the Regions Hospital and Gillette, the hospital systems. You'll definitely be relying a lot on input from those representatives.
Absolutely. Thank you, Peter. And now just to focus on the Mount Airy Street station a little bit to the north. So this station is located at the intersection of Jackson and Mount Airy or Winter Street, depending on which side of Jackson you're talking about, in the Capitol Heights neighborhood. Part of the Purple Line project will deliver some crosswalk intersections at this intersection, as well as a new sidewalk along the south side of Winter Street to fill in a sidewalk gap in this area. Next slide, please. I've kind of hinted at this, and Peter did as well, but public and stakeholder engagement is really important to these station area plans, because these plans are designed to shape how these station areas evolve and develop over the next 10 to 20 years. And so the goal here is to gather and incorporate input from a representative range of stakeholders, particularly historically underrepresented communities. And some examples of capital area stakeholders include, as Peter referenced, the many state agencies that have a presence in these station areas, nonprofit organizations and service providers such as the Boys and Girls Club, affordable housing residents such as those at Mount Airy, neighborhood groups like the Capitol Heights Block Club that Peter and I met with last week, and other major employers such as Regions Hospital. So these are all examples of stakeholders that throughout this 2-year process will be involved and engaged in providing input. Next slide, please. That's all I have for today about station area planning. As I mentioned, it's just getting started, but we're really looking forward to getting started and really enjoying the collaboration with the CAP board, and I'd be happy to take a question at this time.
I will add, as we wait for any question or broader questions, then whatever time we have left, Madam Chair, is that there's a real focus in the selection of the consultant on how they've been successful in a very authentic community engagement process, but secondly, how that translates directly. What's that cooking? The recipe for getting that engagement and input actually into the policy that comes out. And that was kind of one of the probably the number one criteria for selection of the consultant team. So I'd just like to thank all three presenters. And with any questions left, Madam Chair, you can take us to the next place here.
Thank you. And yes, thank you so much for those presentations. Really thoughtful. Appreciate just the quilt analogy. I think works very well here, and are just excited for community-focused opportunities in this area. Members, any questions? Hey, we are a quiet group in some ways today, but maybe that just means that folks are thorough. Mr. Mclean, I see you raising your actual hand.
Yeah, I couldn't find my electronic button, but yeah, thanks. Thanks, all the updates, really exciting. In particular, all of them actually. I just wanted to note, actually more of a comment than a question, I guess. And you may have already come across these groups, but just want to put out there. In addition to Health Partners, I serve on the board of the St. Paul Downtown Alliance, which is another stakeholder group that I think could be really helpful in this. And then the Capitol River Council, which I know I saw it on at least one of the plans. So the District Council for Downtown, a good forum. I used to be on the board there, so not as connected as I used to be. But and Paul Mandel used to be very generous with his time and was on that board and spent a lot of time with them. But a good source of kind of input and engagement. And then I know that the areas we're talking about have a number of other district councils within them that I'm not familiar with, but those are good sources of information and input. So you're probably connecting with them already, but just wanted to put in a plug for those.
I'll just say yes, certainly. I think there's in all three projects, there's connections to all those two. St. Paul Alliance is definitely one that we'd want to check in on, though, especially for the Downtown Commons study.
Yeah, and happy to make a connection if you haven't already.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Anything else, Peter, Mr. Musty, on these presentations?
No, not at this point. Simply thank you to all three presenters. Again, these are overviews. Any questions that there's follow-up on is good. They also provided a great summary in the memo for anyone live streaming. Those are up on the website as well. And all three projects have great websites. So the idea was to give an overview so that when they come back in the coming months or years, there's some familiarity for the board members.
Wonderful. Thank you so much to our three presenters. We really appreciate you, appreciate the work that has been ongoing over many years. So thank you so much for that overview and update. And Mr. Musty, thank you for walking us through that presentation. So we will move on now. Again, thank you. So moving along on our agenda, I believe the Executive Secretary has an update for us related to the recent input board staff provided to the Department of Administration as it implements the appropriated funds to plan for the potential demolition of the Ford building. Executive Secretary, please go right ahead.
Yes, thank you. And I believe we have a slide to go with this as well. So as you recall, last we spoke about this at the board. The Department of Administration shared with us their plan to proceed with a capital requests, one of them being to ask for funding for demolition of the Ford building and temporary restoration of the site until such time as a future project would occur there. That request is moving forward. So in the meantime, as in their hoped for anticipation of that being approved, they're putting together a site plan concept which would B, what the site looks like after the building comes down for its temporary use. CAP board staff and advisors have taken a look at the preliminary site plan, and we're providing them some input on it in regard to some of the standards we have around here, different permits or zoning things that might trigger. However, just want to make clear that this is not in place of CAP board formal review of a site plan application or issuance of a permit. If that would only proceed if admin does have its funding request approved, including the notwithstanding clause that removes comprehensive plan requirement for a broad reuse study of the site and the area next to it. But we do want to give them, advisement now, so they're at least on the way to having a concept that they would then be able to work on in more detail if and when they come to the CAP board for our regular site plan review process. Are there any questions about that? So any of you that sort of track this stuff closely might see a site plan floating around at some point and think, oh, where'd that come from? That didn't come before us. So the news is it may come before you in a more detailed form in the future through our regular process. Any questions on that?
Ms. Spadro, go right ahead.
Madam Chair, you might be surprised that the Ford building and its future was a subject of my administration working for Governor Pawlenty. It's been around for a long, long, long time, and I know the Department of Administration has long sought to do something with the building and its state of sad repair. My question is, where and from where is the advocacy coming to retain the building, and where is the support for its historical significance since it is not on the register?
Executive Secretary, do you want to take that question?
Yeah, the SHPO had submitted a unanimous application for designation by the feds, and that was turned down towards the end of 2009. There were a couple issues that they were concerned about, that they didn't feel that it met designation, and SHPO went back and forth with the staff at the federal level, but ultimately it was not accepted. There is, depending on who you talk to, buildings that have been around for a long time and played a role can have significance for people aesthetically, perhaps because it represents manufacturing, and local jobs, different things. And so when the comprehensive plan process was going forward over a number of years, discussion of this building was part of larger conversations about the area, and in that comprehensive plan process and more specific geographic planning locally around there as part of the comp plan. The intent and requirement written into the comprehensive plan was that there would, prior to any decision about demolition of the building moving forward, there would be a reuse study to look at different scenarios for the building and the properties around it as part of redevelopment in the future, and that those scenarios would include and compare, retaining the building as part of a larger redevelopment, reusing part of it, or it coming down. So that was where this board, which approved the comp plan last March, sort of officially left off on it. And I think, as I'd said to you in our introductory meeting, the recent capital requests that moved forward from Department of Admin requesting the demolition funding included a notwithstanding clause that, if the legislature approved it, removes the requirement under the comp plan that they do a reuse study prior to demolition. It's hard to tell that story quickly. And Peter Musty and Paul Mandel, who were around for many years, are much, have a lot more of that history, as you do as well.
And I'm wondering, I don't know if Commissioner Roberts Davis or Assistant Commissioner Campbell have anything to add here, because they've been all up in it. Oh, it appears as though they are no longer on, so they can follow up later. But it sounds like Ms. Badgerow, you also are very familiar with this site and this project.
I am quite familiar, Madam Chair. My concerns were a question, really. It's just I'm trying to gain information and knowledge. Is there a groundswell of public opinion about retaining the Ford building for historic reasons? And I'm wondering from whence that is coming, if at all.
I know that there were, I can jump in here, and I'll make sure that we follow up with you, Ms. Badgerow, too, with additional context and information as well from the Commissioner and Assistant Commissioner. But I know for quite some time, Representative Diane Loeffler was one of the who we miss tremendously. Was one of the primary voices behind the maintaining the Ford building as it currently exists. And so I'm not sure what else to add in addition to that, but it was from a lot of her advocacy that kept this project wanting to maintain it in its current state.
Yeah, and I would like to add there was a report prepared by the advisors on the building and recommendations a number of years ago that was provided to the board, and the strong recommendation that the building be seriously considered for reuse, that it had the structural integrity and different elements that would warrant that. And I've been hearing about this building for some time. Brian McMahon, you've heard of him, was a big advocate, and different people have cared about the building in the preservation circles. I think as time goes on and you have the conversation over and over and over, at some point people that are excited about saving it or hopeful lose steam. And so I think people that originally were hopeful and excited about retaining it, just as part of our landscape and our economy in this community over time. I think they've kind of lost steam and fallen to the side. Mm-hmm. Which isn't to say that there aren't people that don't care. It's just time tends to wear that down.
Yeah, understand. Thank you.
But I'd encourage you to go back and read some of those documents, and I can provide, maybe just send out a reminder of those documents and attachments to you and other board members, just so everybody knows where they are.
Okay. Any other questions from members? Thank you for that update, Executive Secretary. Anything else? Okay, moving right along here. So I know members in your packet for this meeting included a number of updates in a memo from Mr. Musty on other projects in the capital area, which are listed right here on this slide. In the interest of time, we will forego asking Mr. Musty to repeat this information for us that was contained in the memo, but we do have a few minutes for any questions or comments that folks may have at this time. So members, do any of you have questions or comments on the memo that was shared with us from Mr. Musty? Executive Secretary.
Yeah, I just want to give a thank you to our zoning administrator and principal planner. He juggles a lot of different projects, as you can see, and it takes me time just to learn about all of these different pieces. So I just want to thank him and encourage any of you that have questions about these projects or want to discuss them to reach out to him because he has so much to share on them.
Absolutely, thank you. Okay, well, I'm not seeing any additional questions. So this may be a first during my tenure as board chair, but I think we have, oh, Mr. Musty, go right ahead.
Just wanted to comment, the one conspicuous missing item is Bethesda. We remember last meeting, we a pretty exciting announcement from them. They have met with the Capitol Heights Block Club since, but are really still in a pre-application mode. So that really on their queue, we will bring more information to you and more of a summary. In fact, probably sooner rather than later coming from Bethesda. But that's not in the summary, and I wanted to just mention that at this point.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. We will be looking forward to that update. I believe that was the first time that I said "ope" publicly in a meeting. So bringing some real Minnesota energy into this meeting. Members, that brings us to the conclusion of our meeting because we have already approved our minutes. I'm wondering if anybody else has anything to add here, questions or comments, additional business. All right, I'm going to try to give you back 15 minutes of your life here. We do have the slide, of course, up on your screen, which is a reminder that March 14th at 10 a.m., we've got the Rules for Commemorative Works on Minnesota Capitol Grounds hearing before us. So it'll be a virtual hearing via WebEx. Here's just my pro tip of the day. Give yourself plenty of time to log into WebEx if that is the platform that is being used for this hearing and all other hearings. But just hope to see all of you again soon and encourage you. We will send out some messaging that you can share with folks regarding this hearing. We would love to have anywhere between 400 and 400 participants for comments. But this has just been a really tremendous process, and I am so proud of all of the work that has happened to get us here. So Gichimigwich, thank you so much to all of you for doing that work. So hope to see you on March 14th at 10 a.m. And just take care, everybody. Please stay healthy and safe. And just appreciate all of you so very much. So with that, members, we are adjourned. Thank you. See you soon.
Bye.